Hi, you guys. Well, I'm happy to report that I'm able to do this video because we only got a tropical storm last night, not a Cat 1 hurricane where I am. So, and we didn't lose power, which means I think that our coast did better than anticipated. I'm in really relaxed clothing. I'm chill because I was up all night just because there was so much wind. A tropical storm is still like 45 to 50 mile an hour winds, and I still had to prepare for a whole hurricane. It was a lot. So anyway, but I didn't want to let you guys down for those of you who love Salt Lake, and I did promise that I would tell a nice Lisa Barlow story to you guys because last week, some of the people that are fans of Lisa felt like I was being too one-sided. So I said, this week I will share a nice story that I heard. Okay, so a friend of mine is a model and she was in New York modeling, and she reached out to me to let me know that she had run into Lisa Barlow in New York City, and she's a very beautiful girl, okay? And Lisa and her connected, I think probably over fashion because my friend is very fashionable as most models are. And they had a really lovely chat about things. Lisa didn't gossip about the show at all, but she was very sweet, very relatable. And my friend said, I think she sounds like such a cool chick. And I really enjoyed meeting her. So I was like, oh, cool. That's a really unusual opinion because I haven't heard that from, people in Salt Lake City. So I was like, that's really cool. Anyway, a different perspective, so something to think about. So one follow-up to last week's recap on YouTube, episode 6. Did anyone ever find out John Barlow's parents, his adopted parents? It's so super secret. I would think that might have even come up in the story at this point. Does anybody know who they are? Okay, so let's get into Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, episode 7. Let's get started. Okay, so we open this week's episode at Heather Gay's choir tryouts. I just, I can't with the choir tryouts. But anyway, so we're at the tryouts and Lisa Barlow performs. She has a better than average voice, which I think impresses upon Heather a little bit. And Lisa Barlow wants to show that she's trying to put effort into her friendship, trying to have a friendship with Heather Gay, who at this point is like, I don't want a friendship with you ever, period. Simultaneously, Angie Harrington and Whitney Rose are friends at this point in time, oddly. This mainly was because Whitney hadn't told Angie Harrington that she had said all this stuff about Angie, saying that Lisa Barlow's husband was cheated on by Lisa for, jazz tickets because she supposedly sucked someone off for seats or whatever, which I know Angie didn't say. She just wouldn't say it. So I believe that rumor started with Whitney. I've said that before, and that was all her doing. But needless to say, not the impression the edit's giving. But we'll and then continue. The new other friend of girl, Angie Katzenevas, who owns a big hair salon type beauty place in Salt Lake City, kind of backs Jen Shah up, which is surprising because they weren't friends before the show. They were actually didn't like each other. And then when they went on the show, I guess Angie could really only find one way to fit in, and that was to have Jen's back in the drama, so she did that. Shh, don't tell anyone. Heather Gay finds out from her assistant at the choir tryouts that Angie Katzenevas, Angie Harrington, Jen Shah are all fighting in front of the practice or tryout. And so Heather Gay comes out and Jen Shah looks for Heather Gay to back her up against Angie Harrington about creating this Finsta account, or her husband creating it. And Heather says, I'm not doing that because Angie's my friend. And although Jen is a longer friend, I think Heather and Angie at this point in time are close off camera. And I think she wanted to have her back. And she knows her husband, Chris, is a stand-up guy. So she didn't do what Jen expected, which was to have her back unconditionally like she did about the indictment. Instead, she said, Chris is a good guy. You should just forgive Angie. And then she brought up that Jen Shah, I guess off camera, had said that she had talked to Chris, he had apologized, and she seemed to be okay with it, but now she wasn't anymore. And Heather was kind of taken aback as to why Jen has taken this position on camera. So Angie, I think to rub it in, sits on Heather Gay's lap like they're besties. And Jen Shah says that Heather should breastfeed Angie. They're so close. Like, what was that? That was funny. So then Heather Gay goes on a confessional video and reminds the audience that the reason Jen Shah is really upset has nothing to do with Chris Harrington's Finsta account called Shah Exposed about Lisa Barlow, but instead has to do with her indictment and her, pleading guilty and facing, 10 to 14 years in prison. And probably that was more the underlying thing upsetting her versus what's playing out in the storyline of the show. She kind of says that in her confessional video. A reoccurring theme in this is that Lisa Barlow has no friends and no one to shoot with. And I do believe that that was the feeling of most of the housewives off camera, which is how it made it on the show. However, of course, when the producers start to get involved, which is what I think happened, that changes. So Whitney became Lisa Barlow's friend and Meredith became Jen's friend, although I do think Meredith does care about Jen's from a mental health perspective, mainly. But, everybody starts to seem to be friends that maybe wasn't off camera, which can be confusing when you're on the show. So I think that's kind of what happened with Lisa Barlow. Although we do see this cute scene where Lisa Barlow asks the group, raise your hand if you're not my friend. And Heather and Angie raise their hand. They're not her friend, but nobody else does. So apparently she has friends. Whitney goes over to Heather Gay's house and tries to talk to Heather about her feelings. Heather is perplexed because she doesn't really understand what Whitney's so upset about in her friendship with her. And frankly, I think Heather's done with Whitney at this point off camera. That's my feeling. I think, honestly, that trip that we watched where they're in their lingerie fighting was a real fight, and that really did break up the friendship. So I think that. So I think, Whitney going over, if it didn't go really, really well, wasn't going to happen anyway. So Whitney brings up Lisa Barlow. It pisses Heather off because she can't understand how Whitney went from hating Lisa for years to now wanting to be her best buddy and advocating for her. And Heather kicks her out of her townhome and says, get out. We go to Heather Gay's beauty lab too, which she says she's intimidated by kind of doing, but needs to do it. And we kind of go on a little bit of that journey with Heather. And we also spend time watching Lisa Barlow talk about how she misses her spirituality and she might want to be more and more involved in the Mormon church. Whitney seems to accept this position, even though Whitney has left the Mormon church and she's, hates the Mormon church basically, or at least that's how it comes off. Dana's going to speak up in the next episode and we're really going to start to see her shine. She hasn't seemed to make much of an impression, but what I heard is that she ends up being actually very dramatic in the show and has altercations with Jen. And yeah, she ends up stepping up in a big way. Okay, so I'm going to drop 2 hints about the new cast members. One is Dana's casted for other things before, and she's had sort of a weird resume. There's rumors about things she's done on video before. So there's that. And then the other thing is that maybe Angie Katsanevas, who seems to be super rich and everything, which she is legit, that's the word, is that she's very successful, but that her relationship with her husband may not be as good as she makes it out. Those are the 2 gossipy things I'll drop here. Yeah. There was a nice scene where Coach Shah is standing up for Jen for the cameras where he's like, these women keep coming for you in different ways, and how do they know that you're not going to just snap? And he's like, they really should apologize to you because of your mental health. I mean, that's fallen on deaf ears, I think, for most of the viewers at this point, where we are in things, which makes me feel bad for him. You think he's doing his best under a really bad situation. One thing that was really annoying was, them kept saying, Chris Harrington is a grown man creating this Finsta account and coming for Lisa, how lame, or whatever. And I just thought, like, thank God he did, because there would be no storyline for today's show whatsoever. I don't know. They need to kick it up a notch. And I guess, like, I don't know why that's a big deal. All of them have accounts, fake fan accounts. I don't understand. I don't know. They kept trying to sell me on this, and I was like, This is like, reminds me of the old days. Listen, in the old days, that would have been horrific and a big deal. But in the days following flipping tables and people going to jail and, abuse and all this stuff, I think, the Finsta account, we're not that dramatic anymore. I'm going to leave it with an opinion. I think that, Heather and Whitney's friendship is truly over, and they're trying to make it work on the show, but it isn't. I think Lisa and Whitney are fair weather friends. I think Angie Katzenevas secretly can't stand Jen, but wanted to be on the show so bad, she did whatever she had to. I think Dana is going to bring it, and I'm excited. She's not really from the Richie part of Salt Lake City, so I think she's going to bring a little, like, hood maybe to the group. And I think that Meredith and Seth in the bathtub was really awkward and weird. And why did she have her foot? And on that note, I'll wrap it up. Let me know what you guys thought about the episode, and what should they do to make this a little more dramatic? I really need to hear your thoughts on this. All right, guys.